people who don't know you, how would you describe yourself to them?
Well, first and foremost, local businessman, community activist, and most importantly, a father in the community that I grew up in a community that I've owned businesses, I've employed, in a community that I currently serve as the county supervisor.
Why, the obvious question, why are you running for Congress?
When you look at some of the challenges we're facing right now and the redistricting, where San Joaquin County united and spoke up about representation from the Valley for the Valley, San Joaquin County in particular. So this is a unique opportunity. And if you look at this crisis that we have for inflation, you look at the escalation in crime, if you look at the ridiculous gas prices, the war on energy, I believe the one-party rule right now in Washington, similar to the one-party rule in California, doesn't best serve the public. And I'm here to bring common sense back to Washington. That balance, so that instead of being polarized, we actually unite and come together and find the crossover of support to move forward measurable actions that will change the quality and the outcome of what we're currently dealing with.
How do you try to do that? Here we're in a district that's obviously leaning more towards Democrats. You're Republican. How do you kind of meet in the middle with those folks?
In my opinion, irrespective of which party, who's the best person, what's their track record, what have they accomplished? Right now, you've got leadership currently in Washington that has to own the economy. You have to own the war on energy and that escalation of cost. You can't avoid that. You can deflect, project all you want and try to make me look like a bad guy with smear campaign and outright lies and misinformation, but you own the economy right now. And that's not a Democrat or Republican or independent issue. That's a community issue. That's a quality of life that we should be able to afford. That's not partisan politics. And I'm not going to go to Washington on the behest of a party. I'm going to go to Washington on behest of the community that I grew up in, the community where I do business in, the community where my daughter is going to school in, the place that I grew up in. I was a baseball coach, the place that I grew up and served this community, not for a political party.
You know, someone might say, that sounds all well and good, but once you get there, then you're pulled by Republican people that have been in Washington for so long that are going to pull you to vote their way. You know, how do you push back against that when you're the new guy, so to speak, in DC?
Well, factually speaking, the political system and parties have not showered me with big dollars. I'm an independent guy. I'm not beholden to anybody. So I'm going to go back, as I have served, and it's really interesting as a county supervisor. We are not partisan. It's a nonpartisan seat. I work across party lines. I support Carlos Villalpudua up in Sacramento, working as a some might consider a blue dog Democrat. I support Carlos in the actions he takes to bring moderate and collaborative decisions to Sacramento. So it's that type of, I think, approach to problem solving that is going to make a big difference. I'm proud that Christina Fugazi, a local Stockton Democrat councilwoman, and I work together. I'm proud that myself and Miguel Villalpudua, a Democrat supervisor, work together. That's not partisan politics. That's solving and addressing the concerns that we deal with on a daily basis.
And what do you believe are some of the big concerns right now? You touched on some of the issues. What do you feel is the one or two of the biggest issues, and how do you propose to solve them?
So cost of living, hands down. And as I said, there's a war on energy. We need to minimize that. We need to ramp up production. We need to stop penalizing the oil production, whether it be refineries or exploration, extraction, and the actual production. We need to open up the Keystone Pipeline. That's the cleanest energy delivery system you could possibly have. America, our economy, our security, and our food stability all depends on energy. So this mandate that we're pushing forward for everything has to be electric or everything has to be clean energy within a certain very short period of time, that's not going to be beneficial for our economy. That's not going to be beneficial for the stability or security of this nation. It's proven already around the world that this is not a stable source of energy to head in that direction and put all your eggs in one basket. We need a menu approach of energy, not just a one-size-shoe-fits-all for all industries and all people. And by the way, do you know how many people can afford a $60,000 to $80,000 electric vehicle right out of the gates? Not many. You want to give a $7,500 voucher to them that was recently passed in Congress and supported by my opponent? Well, $7,500 off of $80,000 still leaves a car that's highly unaffordable for most of the people here in San Joaquin County, including myself.
Fracking, are you in favor of that?
Absolutely. Wherever and however you can get oil and energy and do it where it's environmentally considerate and in a structured, safe environment, absolutely. We've proven it. Oil, there's not oftentimes found a great big pond of oil and you just pull out and you've got all this clean oil. You have to, in some way, shape, or form, capture it. You have to disrupt its sitting areas and get it to a point where you can extract it and utilize it.
Let's talk about a report on you by San Joaquin County.
Sure.
It was obtained by the San Francisco Chronicle, and this is something that you could respond to that your opponent's been critical of you. First, an allegation that you mentioned before of bribery that you had, and this is from the San Francisco Chronicle, I'm quoting,
Sure.
quote, promised a board member at a local homeless organization funding in exchange for support of Patti's plan to build a regional shelter. You were cleared in this, though. What really happened?
Listen, you want to hear the most malicious element of this? It's Josh Harder's paid staff that came forward with the allegation. Literally, his paid staff caused an investigation of, can you think of anything worse than a bribery for in business or in politics to accuse somebody of, which I never, ever, ever could or would do, ever. It's preposterous. But for Josh Harder's paid staff to come forward with that allegation and for there to be an investigation, and in the summary report, she says, oh, I don't know anything much about that. Well, there goes tens of thousands of dollars of taxpayer dollars for a blatantly false and misleading accusation that, by the way, the director of that homeless plan that I supposedly had, he has written a letter refuting and denying and absolutely negating any such conversation ever happened.
So nothing ever happened. There was
Oh, God, no. There's no truth to it in any capacity. And if you want to, you want any validation on it, contact Bubba Smith. He's supposed to be the one that I've tried to bribe? Seriously? Not even close. In fact, he and I had a great conversation more about mentorship and making certain that the homeless issues are addressed countywide, not in a region. And by the way, there's no piece of paper on planet Earth that would define Tom Patti's homeless plan. Every city has their own plan, and we as a board funded the startup of all those plans. Some of them had different cost ratios per bed. That was up to them to decide, not mine. It's completely preposterous.
How about the same report found that you've, quote, threatened people who work for the county and local community organizations? Report says you insulted or berated employees or other staffers. How do you respond to that?
So first off, I will say that this has been 100% a partisan attack campaign against me. Started about 2 years ago when political operatives were hired and started smearing and beseeching me and accusing me of all sorts of slanderous things, none of which was true. None of which had ever happened. So what we have going on in this investigation, first off, is hearsay. Secondly, my constitutional rights were denied. I was never even interviewed before that investigation was closed out. I was never even given a date certain of when the investigation was going to close out in order for me to reply. So the investigation was closed, came to conclusions of hearsay. Nobody spoke under penalty of perjury, not one person. So we have people accusing me and allegations. At the very worst, first off, I never threatened anybody. Ever, ever, never did that happen. Secondly, at worst, I may have ruffled some feathers. And guess what? I'm glad I did. Because when you're keeping businesses closed or you're paralyzed by your paralysis of analysis and you're getting nothing done, I, as a county supervisor, expect results. I want things to be done different or better so that we are keeping jobs alive in San Joaquin County, that we're opening up businesses instead of keeping them closed. But as far as some of the threats, I threatened to withhold funding for a homeless shelter stuff, not possible. I'm one supervisor. How could I withhold money that the city was going to give them? So I mean, these are blatantly false accusations by a homeless director at a shelter that was since fired for her inability to actually manage that program. But that's, I'm sure, another topic or discussion. But I can assure you, I never once threatened that person or to withhold funding for that to be a sustained allegation. That never happened. Factually never happened.
So this whole investigation that was done, you were never allowed to be interviewed?
I was never allowed, I was never interviewed. I was never given a date certain of when the interview process would be closed. And when I asked what I being accused of so I can know what to prepare myself for, do I need an attorney? I mean, where's this going? I was denied by the investigator that right. So I'm not even aware of what I'm going to be accused of. It's like that's against the Constitution. There are parameters of how not only a public figure, but how a citizen should be treated during an investigation. So the whole thing really, truly, we have a weaponized ethic code that allows these types of things to happen. And it needs to be addressed. In the next board and next year, we'll likely end up addressing that. And this is something we've seen a pattern of from 2 supervisors that use the ethics code as a weapon to try to relegate somebody into, perhaps some sort of public shame.
Is there any way you've tried to make peace between yourselves on the board, or is it something that just irreparable?
I've offered that in the past. Hey, let's have lunch sometime. Let's have a conversation. But they seem to be more comfortable firing allegations and being insulting than anything else. And that's on them. While they focus on negative, I'm going to focus on positive. I'm here not for a popularity contest. I'm here for results, to address the homeless issue, to address and deal with the COVID crisis, make certain that parents have rights when it came to their children's health decisions. I'm there to address that which is most critical, or that which will be transformative. How do we change the trajectory to make it better? Not status quo, and certainly not staying on a decline, no matter what the challenges may be.
And speaking of the COVID crisis, a couple more questions. One other criticism by your opponent, for this, back in August of last year, being the only supervisor who abstained from distributing over $33 million in American Rescue Plan funds, yet received a COVID PPP loan of over $31,000 for your business Delta Crane service. What is your response to his criticism?
I'm proud that we helped the businesses that we did stay open and pay some of the bills that they did in order to maintain operation. That later stage, and first off, I never denied anybody anything. We never denied anybody anything in any capacity as it came to COVID relief. The last and final stages of distribution, so for those dollars and a reallocation, there were businesses open and there were people not returning to work. And the only thing I said in that meeting was, we need to make certain that if they're claiming that they're unemployed, we should be contacting their former employer and see if that job is available. I was in favor of, we had noise go by, so I was in favor of making sure we contact their former employer and see if that job was actually still open. Because we know that we had people staying home, not returning to work, and just getting government dollars so that they didn't have to go back to work. So I wanted to make sure that we were validating and not allowing the taxpayer dollars to be abused by people that had a job available but chose not to go to work. But we did not deny anybody anything in San Joaquin County.
So that's why you abstained for that reason?
I abstained because I didn't vote for it. I didn't vote against it. I knew it was going to pass. It was all going to pass. It's like, you know what? Let's abstain from this because I'm not certain this later stage of dollars and allocation to people is as necessary as is being talked about and as the necessity for allocation. I believe that when the jobs are available, people should be knocking on doors and getting back to work, not staying home and receiving more government subsidies when the crisis is over, businesses are open, and jobs are available. We should not keep giving them more government subsidies. And what we see about that, those last phases of ARPA, that's one of the reasons for the explosion of inflation. We had so many people given so many dollars that their buying and purchasing power increased and prices went up because supply didn't reach demand. That's one of the reasons what affected our inflation rate.
And for yourself, for your own business, you took the $33,000, correct?
Yeah, I was entitled. I think we probably put in an application for 70 or 80, and we were awarded a pared down amount, and that allowed me to keep my doors open. It allowed me during, when income dropped dramatically, and I'm employing people, and I'm making payroll, and I'm keeping them moving and giving them dollars. We justified the use of those dollars for the payment of what I had in overhead and for my staff.
Your final thoughts on why voters should vote for you?
So, it's a great question. The main and dramatic difference between myself and my opponent, first off, is results. My opponent has to own what's going on in Washington, and his entire multi-million-dollar campaign of diversion away from his inaction or the actions he's taken that have caused high inflation, the war on energy, the escalated cost of gasoline, not addressing the homeless issue. All of these crises that are going on is under the current one-party system in Washington, D.C. I'm going to be the counterbalance to that. I'm going to come in and work as a moderate. I'm going to work in the middle ground to find those on the Republican side, those on the Democrat side that are going to make a difference. The biggest difference is, as a business owner, as a parent, I have done economic activity and commerce, and I've done employment for people in San Joaquin County in the millions of dollars. I work for local nonprofits. I've been a baseball coach. I've done things in my community that I call home. My opponent, zero on all of that. He's moving here from Stanislaus for political opportunity. He lives in Washington, D.C. in a multi-million-dollar condominium. His wife works for the state of Virginia, not for the state of California. His wife works for the state of Virginia, recruiting businesses out of California successfully to relocate to Virginia. That's not what I'm doing. I'm working for the people where I live. I'm working for the people that I currently serve. I'm working for the people that for decades I've done work, I've employed, and I've done commerce with my community for decades. And my father, 30 plus years before me, my father and mother.